Hello, I'm Mark, and I'd like to welcome you to another Fool for Homeschool video. Homeschool Sex Education. I created this lesson with lots of love for my own kids, and I think I've covered just about everything. It is a full lesson, a little over an hour, designed for all ages, taking topics at a pace that's best for retention and thorough understanding. So if you don't have the time now, please bookmark it and feel free to add it to your own home curriculum. Please give me a like if you're feeling it, and check out my other videos by clicking on the links at the end of this video. Included are videos relating the most important parenting skill, the one secret rule to raising a brilliant child, and the secret guide to perfect homeschooling. But for right now, here comes Homeschool Sex Education. The topic of sexuality evokes shy discomfort in those who would rather talk about something else. To others, it may call up curiosity and questions. To some, sexuality elicits feelings of revulsion, anger that the issue is simply being discussed. Then again, it can bring forth feelings of comfort, thoughts of love, intimacy, and connection. To victims of sexual abuse, the topic can excite fear and can bring past trauma fresh to the mind. The topic of sexuality can call up a seemingly endless variety of emotions. Sexuality is an integral part of the way we feel physically, day to day. It laces its way through many of our social relationships and can cause great upheavals in our ability to understand each other. It is a basic component of our tribal traditions, religions, mythology, and our culture, the media that we read, watch, and listen to. It is everywhere, but we do not directly discuss it often. And yet our ability or inability to understand sexuality can drastically change the course of our relationships, our health, and our careers or life goals and dreams. Do you know that all living things are made up entirely of cells? And each of those cells is alive too. For instance, this doggy wog here, his name is Loki. He's made up of so many cells, you couldn't even imagine it. We could say trillions, but we may as well say cajillions, because it's not something we can wrap our minds around. Right? That's right. That's right. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. All the cells of a living creature or plant are alike in certain ways. Each cell in your body lives its own life, following an instruction manual or playbook on how to function within its own walls. We call that playbook DNA. Cells have different purposes. You have brain cells, which exchange electrochemical signals with each other. You have hair cells, which grow hair. You have skin cells, bone cells. You even have blood cells, teeny living structures that form the liquid we call blood, perfectly designed to carry oxygen to our tissues and remove carbon dioxide back to our lungs. Every bit of you and every other living organism is composed entirely of cells. So you are not a microscopic organism made up of a single cell floating in the ocean, are you? No. Over the past several billion years, those single-celled life forms became more complex. They evolved into more complicated organisms with many cells working together but doing different things. As the ages moved along, these organisms became more and more complicated. You are the crowning achievement of all that evolution. You might think of yourself as this colossus made of trillions of infinitesimally small individual cells working together to do things no organism has ever accomplished before. You can dream, and you can realize your dreams. You can wonder, and then you can think critically and gain new understanding. You can accomplish romance and true love, and you can rise above hatred and fear. Then, you can inspire others to do more than you're capable of doing on your own. Now I'm going to trust you know the story of evolution and how the only way nature was able to make a colossus like you was through trial and error. Millions of years passed, while the organism that was to become you left behind less helpful traits and kept traits that were helpful, to the point that we now are just chock full of amazing traits. A backbone, limbs, bodies that retain moisture, stereoscopic vision, respiration, warm blood circulation, opposable thumbs, advanced cognition, a two-footed gait that allows us to walk tall and be observant. In order to accomplish this, the first and most important thing nature had to have us do was have sex. Nothing else is more vital to an organism than having sex. If you can't make babies, your species doesn't die out. It ends right there and then with you. Do I need my teeth? Nah, birds don't have teeth. Do I need arms? Fish don't have arms. The only thing you really need to be an organism is a way to make babies. So when your body starts changing to get you to make babies, it's the most natural thing that will ever happen to you. It isn't weird or gross or shameful or ugly. It is as natural as breathing. Get that straight. Puberty can happen at other times, but it usually occurs between the ages of 10 and 16. Girls usually experience puberty earlier than boys. You may have already heard about or even experienced the changes that come with puberty. Kids grow more in puberty, for instance, which is why girls get taller earlier than boys. Also, hair starts growing in your armpits, on your legs, on your private parts, on your face, hair, and pimples or acne. Little bumps with white stuff in them grow on your face and other parts of your body. They go away, but others come out about the same time, so you might never get a break from them until you grow out of them as an adult. With puberty, you begin to sweat, sometimes smelly sweat, so you have to wash more than you did as a kid. You have to be careful to wash all parts of your body with soap, especially your sexual areas, and your anus, your butt where poop comes out. Not funny. Poop has bacteria that can make you sick. We call bacteria that makes you sick germs. The word germs is really only that, a bad word for bacteria. Because bacteria is mostly good. You have trillions of bacteria living in your body right now, and in fact, you need them to live. Boys and girls have their own puberty changes too. Boys may notice changes in their breasts growing larger or other parts of their body growing faster in relation to their bodies. The boy's scrotum, the pouch of skin under the penis that contains the reproductive gland called the testes or balls, grows, and then his penis starts to get larger. A boy's voice changes too, but it sounds funny for a long time, going up and down unpredictably before it settles into a lower, deeper sound. A boy begins to be more aware of his sexuality also. His penis begins getting hard, even when he's not thinking about sex sometimes. That is called an erection, or a hard-on, or a stiffy. And his testes start producing semen. Semen is a thick, sticky substance made up of tiny organisms called sperm that can swim. The semen spurts or ejaculates from the male penis during sex, so to go far into the female body. Believe it or not, in each squirt of semen there are 100 million invisibly tiny sperm. Once inside the female's body, the sperm wave their tiny tails for propulsion and swim towards the female's tiny eggs, trying to create a new life. More on that later. For now, just imagine a confused boy waking up one morning with a hard penis ready to ejaculate semen. Or maybe he wakes up with a sticky mess of smelly semen already ejaculated into his sheets. Yes, sexual people sometimes have sexual experiences in their sleep and in their dreams. It is called a nocturnal emission. He might be embarrassed. He needs to do some laundry. Then he's got to figure out how to deal with that natural tendency of his mind and body to urge him towards sexual behavior. We call that being horny. I know it's a funny word. It's a 400-year-old expression that comes from the shape of the penis resembling a horn. But it's not only used for men anymore. Women can be horny too, or turned on. Or if we are being very polite, we might say aroused. Kids in puberty have to get used to the fact that they'll start to feel a desire to be sexual. This will conflict sometimes with how they're seen in their family. Maybe family still sees you as a child, but you don't feel that way. Or maybe you find yourself looking more like an adult than you feel, and people are treating you like you're more sexually mature than you feel. Lots of confusing feelings in puberty. How do you get people to treat you differently than they have been treating you? Sigmund Freud, the first psychologist, called sexual desire, passion, and longing the libido, from the Latin word for pleasure. The interesting thing about the libido is it is contained entirely within our own body and mind. It is therefore very personal. Very personal. Please understand that your libido, your sexual feelings, desires, and interests, that libido belongs to you and no one else. It's no one else's business. So if someone starts asking questions about your sexual interests or desires, it's entirely within your right to ignore them. You have zero obligation to discuss your sexual interests or desires with anyone. And I mean anyone. You know, puberty only lasts a few years, and then you're an adult forever. It's a very special time of joyful discovery of one's own body and feelings. It's usually experienced very privately. Some adults are nostalgic for their puberty. They would like to have those feelings again. And so they ask you questions about how you feel sexually. Or they call your attention to another young person and romantically, so that they can watch your reaction to the situation they forced you into. These adults are way out of line. These adults have to stop. These adults have to mind their own business. And it's fine for you to politely tell them to do so.
And that brings me to another very private subject, masturbation. Masturbation is one of the great discoveries of puberty, when a person rubs their own sexual organ in a way that feels extremely good, so as to satisfy their libido. This ends with a feeling of intense pleasure, perhaps the most ecstatic feeling a person can experience. We call that an orgasm, or we might also call it coming. For a boy, it ends with a bit of a mess too, as all that sticky semen squirts out. An orgasm is one of the carrots nature dangles before you to try to get you to make a baby. In addition to sexual urges, girls notice their breasts and hips growing. About a year later, they notice a white substance coming from their vagina. The vagina is not the outside of a girl's genitalia. That part is called the vulva. That vulva features the labia, or lips, and the highly sexually sensitive upper tip called the clitoris. Just inside the labia is the opening to the tubular-shaped vagina, located below the urethra, the tiny opening urine comes through, and above the anus. About a year after the white substance comes from the vagina, girls begin to menstruate. So let's explain menstruation. First, we need to understand about eggs. A woman has eggs in a part of her body called her ovaries. These eggs are produced when she is a fetus in the womb. As a fetus, she has 7 million eggs. She will never produce any more. At birth, as a baby, she only has 1 million eggs left. By puberty, a girl has about 300,000 eggs left in her ovaries. Once she enters puberty, every month the female body ovulates. Ovulation is when the female's ovaries send about 350 of these teeny tiny eggs down to her uterus. The uterus is the wonderfully protective organ above her vagina that will hold a developing fetus as it grows into a baby. The uterus is also called the womb. When the male sperm ejaculates into a female's vagina during sex, the sperm then try to swim up to try to fertilize or fuse with or become one with an egg in the fallopian tubes that connect the ovaries with the uterus. That fertilized egg must then attach to the wall of the uterus if it will be able to become a new organism. If it does not fertilize an egg, or even if it does fertilize an egg, but another fertilized egg has attached to the uterine wall first, it will be flushed away. Now, since the first goal of any organism is reproduction, that uterus must always be in perfect shape and always ready to accept a fertilized egg. The way the female body accomplishes this is by creating a fresh new lining to the uterus every month. So every month the uterus sheds a lining which comes out of the vagina as a bloody-looking fluid and at the same time, it begins building a new lining. Once a month or so, a girl menstruates for 4 or 5 days. This is called a girl's period. Her body secretes a small amount of bloody waste from her vagina. Women wear an absorbent menstrual pad on their underwear or insert a thin but very absorbent tampon into their vagina to catch the waste. If a girl is not ready with a menstrual pad or tampon, it might cause a red stain on her clothing. How embarrassing, right? A friend might loan her a sweatshirt to tie around her waist until she can change her clothes. Not the end of the world. Those monthly changes a girl's body is making are accomplished through signals sent using chemical messengers called hormones. These hormones can affect a girl's mind and body, causing her cramps, moodiness, acne, and bloating. This is called premenstrual syndrome, or PMS. So a period can be more difficult for some girls than others, depending on one's individual body. At times, she may need to consult with her doctor. If you've ever met a baby, you know our reproductive systems are at the center of everything that is glorious about human life. We need to treat our bodies with great care.
I haven't talked about everything that happens at puberty. Peer influence increases, which means your peers, the kids you like to hang out with, can lead you to do foolish things that you know better than. When I was a kid, I started smoking cigarettes. Even though I used to walk around preaching against cigarette smoking. But I was just hanging out with some friends one day, and I wanted to fit in. I wanted to keep hanging out with them. And as a result, I spent the next 20 years of my life hooked on this poisonous habit, addicted to spending all this money on cigarettes. And it wasn't until my father died of lung cancer that I was able to quit.
Then there are drugs and alcohol, which can make you slow and dreary and a bore to be around, not to mention draining your health and your money. You see, during puberty, we do not know yet who we are, and so we sometimes are cool with letting someone else tell us who to be, especially if we don't want to choose to leave friends behind, which is never any fun. Some kids even get involved in criminal behavior or unwanted sexual behavior in order to maintain friendships. So an independent spirit can be a helpful friend to a kid going through puberty. If you've got an independent spirit, consider yourself lucky. And you have to be doubly more careful if you come from a family with all sorts of problems. When a kid comes from a troubled family, drugs and criminality can actually feel like a relief, an escape from your difficulties. But in fact, they lead nowhere you want to be. So puberty is a time of growing up, becoming more responsible and serious. It is a time when we develop stronger criticism of ourselves. We become more conscious of healthy habits. We start to boss ourselves around more and reach for things we want or for improvements in our lives. Of course, you need to be careful you're being a boss who is kind and loving because you deserve kindness and love from yourself. In puberty, we find a balance between critical and kind that leads to the person we want to be. Watch out for that critical mind, though, because there are some new things that will be going on in your mind. Intelligent creatures as humans are, our minds not only tell us what we should do, but they tell us what we should not do, what we might do, what someone else could do. It is our mind's job to keep track of all the possible challenges that may face us.
For instance, your mother may be watching you skateboarding and say, "Be careful you don't crack your head open." Cracking your head open is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. And it would probably never happen to you too. Likely it would never happen to you. But still, it's one of the first things conjured in the mind of a person who cares very deeply for you and your safety. From the time we're toddlers, our minds keep track of dangerous and immoral things. We couldn't be safe or moral without our minds doing that.
It is natural for your thoughts, your cognition, to show you forbidden or immoral things, just as it is natural for your mind to show you the normal or expected possibilities. When you walk into a store, you don't feel immoral just because your mind tells you you might steal something if you wanted to. You hardly even notice the thought. However, sexuality is usually not brought into our minds until puberty, and much of the new ideas can be frightening to us. There is what we call abusive sexuality. This is sexuality that is hurtful to others or to ourselves. Just as some people might cut themselves or starve themselves, there are people who engage in sexuality that is harmful to themselves. And people sometimes use sexuality to hurt others, to embarrass or trap them, to dominate them or control them, to cause them physical or emotional pain. Add to these variations what we call perverse sexuality. This is when a person gets turned on by behavior that violates cultural norms and laws, such as bestiality, sex with animals, necrophilia, sex with dead bodies, and paraphilia, sexual contact with adults who are not consenting or with any children. Some of the most harmful types of sexuality require medication or even surgical intervention to help a person get control of their own urges. Some new thoughts or ideas like these can come as a shocking surprise when they come into our unsuspecting minds at puberty, when we might not yet be sure who we are sexually. Young people sometimes fear that just the thought of these possibilities is a bad premonition of who they will eventually become. It is not. It is normal to think of these disorders because it means your mind is just keeping track of all this new, poorly processed information, so to be fully knowledgeable of the world around you.
To be fully aware, we also need to understand sexual identity. Egads, just to define sexual identity, it's quite a complicated discussion. In puberty, we have the body actively changing to prepare us for having sex. We have new electrochemical activity in the brain urging us to have sex. So what exactly is sex?
Is sex male and female gendered bodies coming together to create a baby? And it's not just that. Sex is not just something people do to make a baby. People have sex to express their love for one another. They also have sex just for fun or excitement. They have sex sometimes just to relieve their sexual desire. And it's not just men having sex with women, but of course many men have sex with men because they are attracted to men, and many women have sex with women because they are sexually attracted to women. And there are people who are attracted to both, and even some people who have no sexual attraction to others. Essentially, any harmless activity that people do together that leads to a sexually pleasing response can be called sex. But thanks to the complexities of the human brain, it is more complicated than that. There are people who do not identify with the gender, male or female, that their physical body might seem to indicate. There are people born with penises who feel like a female. There are people born with vaginas who feel male. Their body feels like it should be different. These people call themselves trans because they feel a need to transition to a different gender than was written on their birth certificate. For trans people, living in a world where they are so different from most can be extremely difficult, and they often are rejected and scorned by others who hate them and don't try to understand them. It is important to note trans people can change their physical bodies through medical treatments, so they are more like the bodies they feel they should have. Famous people have done so. Take Bruce Jenner, a great Olympic star, perhaps the greatest male athlete in the world at the time. After his Olympic victories, he changed his body to fit how he felt in his mind, and now he has become a she. Caitlyn Jenner is her name. It is respectful to refer to trans people using pronouns of their own identity. So we would refer to a trans person who changed their body to have male characteristics as he or him, just as we refer to Caitlyn Jenner as she or her. Like colors of a rainbow, there is a vast variety of gender and sexual identity of all shades one might imagine. It is important that we allow for others to be accepted and happy about how they feel inside, and try to keep our minds open to changing and learning. And it can get more complicated than even that. There are people who are trans. They feel like a different gender than what their birth certificate says, but they are still attracted to the same gender they identify with. I once met a guy who was born as a girl. Growing up as a girl, she always felt like a boy. After she reached puberty, she started transitioning to be a man, even though her family responded with hatred and rejection. As a man, he only dated men because he felt like a homosexual man. So he had to transition through this intense journey that was full of trouble and strife. But by the time I met him, he was very happy and satisfied with his life. You see, from the beginning of time, people have tried to control sexuality and use it for the purposes of gaining power over each other. Human tribes devised bad names for the libido. They called it lust and said it was an act against their God, a sin. They made rules about how women should present themselves to men to keep men from feeling lust. To this day, women in many cultures are taught to ritually wear veils and robes and even wigs to cover their natural beauty. To this day, tribes actually cut off parts of the pleasure-sensitive clitoris and parts of the penis, too, in order to make their people less motivated by sexuality. In the United States, for instance, approximately 65% of boys have the outer skin of their penises cut off when they are babies. This is called circumcision. Although it is not healthy, it causes great pain, and it will take away from sexual enjoyment later in life. It is purely a tribal practice. As one father once explained to me, "I'm giving my son a circumcision because I want him to look like me." These efforts to control sexuality differ vastly by culture. Just pay a visit to the art museum. At the beginning of human culture, 35,000 years ago, from an area of modern-day Germany, we see these stone carvings of female figures that have highly exaggerated sexual features. And from an area that would become France, these phalluses. A phallus is an object shaped like a penis. They seem to be totems celebrating birth and sexuality. But if we skip forward in time 34,000 years to the same location, but to a time after which people have learned to farm, travel, and write, and after which they have developed religious cultures, we see the artwork has become essentially devoid of sexuality. The figures are covered in heavy robes, obliterating the shapes of their bodies. Their faces are expressionless. The focus is entirely on their religious meaning.
This all changes with the Renaissance, or rebirth of culture after the Dark Ages. Check out Bernini's Ecstasy of St. Teresa for the best example of sexuality returning to European art, but in a hidden way, where it is actually being used to direct one's focus to God. Carved from white marble in Rome in 1650, the subject here is a nun. Nuns are religious servants who have promised never to have sex, as lust is sinful. Still, you could not imagine a more orgasmic expression than what is on the face of St. Teresa here in the Catholic chapel where the statue was created.
And check out the angel with his golden spear. I'm just saying. Still, could St. Teresa have any more clothes on? Let's walk over to the museum's Asian wing. Here we have carvings from a 10,000-year-old Hindu temple that celebrate sexuality openly and honestly. The figures are shapely and exposed, and even in some cases engaged in sexual acts. Now, let's consider our woke modern culture. If you've ever been to a hospital, you know it is one of the least sexiest places. There are lots of gross smells. There are people seriously injured, bleeding, even dying. There are extremely sad people walking around, and the people employed there are highly trained and working very hard. Still, if you watch a hospital drama on modern television, you would think behind every third hospital door is a pair of surgical residents illicitly making love. Why do dramas about hospitals have so much casual sex? Do people really have all this casual sex? And it's not just hospital dramas. Pick an adult television show or movie at random and you're likely to see people jumping into bed together after just a casual meeting. Do people do that? The general answer is no. The average American has lots of sex, but only 7 sexual partners in their entire lifetime. 7 in their entire lifetime. That's about 1 partner every 10 years. So why do TV shows have people jumping into bed together the minute they feel their chemistry click? Well, let's say I'm the writer on a hospital drama. I have to write stories about cancer and heart attacks and whatever interesting medical oddities I can research. I have an hour of airtime to fill with these stories, and I want to keep the viewers from losing interest. My job depends on it. So without enough intellectually stimulating material, what if I decide to just bypass the intellect? What if I appeal directly to the mind's primal urges? As I explained earlier, your body is primally interested in having sex. So why not spend some time waving that in front of you and give the writer a break?
In modern culture, you have to really do some thinking if you want to arrive at a natural, honest relationship with your own sexuality. You have to invent yourself while ignoring so many distractions.
And you need to steer clear of the hazards of love and sexuality. The greatest hazard of love and sexuality may be the swoon. The swoon can happen to anyone, and it may very well happen to you someday. The swoon is when you stop thinking clearly because you are so in love. The swoon takes over our common sense and replaces it with the goal of realizing our dream to find love. No one can help us. No friend or family member can reason with us. It is as if we are on a runaway train. Only after it's all over and we're left in a heap of rubble on the tracks can we look back and wonder, what was I thinking? It can happen to others who are in love with you, and you may very easily fail to notice. Maybe they begin treating you unkindly because they have feelings for you they don't want to have. Or maybe they resent the fact that their love is unrequited. There's a good vocabulary term. Unrequited love, which means unanswered or unreciprocated love. Unrequited love is love that one person feels, that is to them universal and undeniable, but which the object of their devotion definitely does not feel. To a person in a swoon, it may seem incomprehensible that their love is unrequited. It may seem as if the other person has teased them or jerked them around purposely. But that is an illusion of love. Love feels answered by its very nature. I have no advice for avoiding the swoon. The only help you might find is anticipating it before it happens, avoiding putting yourself in positions where you may lose control. When in a full swoon, we do stupid things. We have sex with someone we do not really want a sexual relationship with. We give away our money. We sell out our friends. But the stupidest thing we can do in the swoon is to fail to practice safe sex.
Practicing safe sex means you take the very necessary measures to ensure that sexuality is safe from disease and that it does not result in an unwanted pregnancy.
Sexuality can lead to disease. When you have sex with someone, if they have a disease, it may be transmitted to you during sex. Even if they are clean and conscientious, if they have had sex with someone else, you can be exposed to a disease that third person or a sex partner of that third person has been exposed to. The disease can be minor, where maybe you get a fever blister on your mouth once every few months for the rest of your life. Or it can be very serious, and even, in very rare cases, lead to death. Sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs, have always been around. When I was in college, a new sexually transmitted disease broke out, known as HIV, or AIDS. Doctors had no treatment at first, and hundreds of thousands of people suffered a heartbreakingly slow and painful death before a treatment was found. Other common STDs are chlamydia, genital herpes, genital warts, gonorrhea, hepatitis, and syphilis. You can get an STD however you choose to have sex. Through sex involving a person's mouth, a person's anus, a person's penis, or a person's vagina. Perhaps worse than an STD is an unwanted pregnancy. I've found kids don't always understand this idea that an unwanted pregnancy can be tragic. Maybe kids think that having a baby is like getting a pet. Or maybe they think getting rid of an unwanted pregnancy is no big deal. The truth is, there's nothing in the world a kid is less prepared for than to become a parent. To decide to have a child is to decide to drastically change your life and not be able to change it back once you realize your mistake. A parent's main thought must always be their child. A good parent is always monitoring their child, questioning and reassessing the child's needs. A good parent needs skills and knowledge to help raise a child. Not just about a child's basic needs, but knowledge about how the world works, what things mean, why things are the way they are. A good parent has to know who they are and where they belong, and what they plan on doing for the next 20 years. Both parents need to be like that, and both parents must work as a team together for the next 20 years. A kid is just not ready to be a parent. A good parent must have a high amount of emotional self-control that one usually only achieves in their 30s. I used to be a probation officer. My job was to meet with criminals on a regular basis, criminals who were not sentenced to prison. But they had to meet with me to show on a regular basis that they were doing the things that they were required to do to make their lives better. The probation department decided how often I had to see these people based almost solely upon their age. Because statistically, when you're younger than 33 years old, you have a much higher likelihood of behaving compulsively. That means in a manner that causes you to do things spontaneously without thinking that can mess up your life. Your friends will move on without you. The other parent will likely move on without you. Why? Because your life will change far beyond anything another kid wants to share in. And kids your age aren't ready for a long-term relationship yet, let alone a long-term dependent parent-child relationship. It is true there is the reward of being loved by a baby, but that is not how a good parent thinks. How they can benefit from having a child. A good parent thinks, is this child going to be lucky to be my child? Or should I wait until I have more to offer? A kid might think a pregnancy is easy to get rid of. This can be true, but it can be completely false, especially if you're a guy wanting a girl to take a morning after pill or abortion pill. She may love you, but she may also decide not to protect against or terminate the pregnancy. If you are the girl who has had unprotected sex, you might find yourself in the center of a controversy with different people in your life wanting you to do different things. Nonetheless, you will need the help of your parents or other responsible adults you trust. If you have had sex without contraception, contraception is a word for birth control, you must really find a Planned Parenthood location or health clinic you can afford and do it quickly to figure out your options. You might choose to take what they call a morning after pill, which is emergency contraception that can prevent pregnancy within a few days of sex. If you wait too long, you may become pregnant. You can get a pregnancy test in the pharmacy or even a dollar store. It can be an emotional catastrophe to end up either going through with an unwanted pregnancy or having an abortion, whether you are able to have it by taking a pill or if you need to have a medical procedure.
This is why adults are so very careful about practicing safe sex. Again, a Planned Parenthood location or your neighborhood health clinic can provide you with all the services you need to practice safe sex. Let's review your options.
Let's start with the good old-fashioned condom, or rubber. The condom is a rolled-up latex bag that goes over a guy's penis. The point is to keep the sperm and any possible disease inside the condom, and to keep any disease that might be coming from a vagina, a mouth, or an anus from getting into the guy's penis from the other direction. You need to know that condoms can and do break, so you should always have a spare. You may have to stop midway through sex to put on a new condom. Another thing, condoms break if you pinch them or swipe them with a fingernail. They break if you use just about any oil or chemical with them that has not been made for the express purpose of being used with condoms. So if your partner just rubs some hand cream on and then touches your condom, that could destroy all that protection. Condoms are 98% effective when used properly, but they often are not used properly, so that they are only 85% effective in preventing pregnancy. Condoms sometimes slip off into the vagina just after orgasm, which can ruin all that protection. So make sure one of you has a hold on the rolled edge of the condom at the base of the penis just after the guy comes. You can't make a condom. Condoms aren't balloons or plastic wrap or plastic bags. They are very carefully manufactured with just the right materials. If you try to substitute something else, it will surely break, and maybe in the heat of sex you won't notice, and you will end up risking disease and pregnancy. You can't double up condoms for extra protection, as the latex rubbing against latex will cause breakage. Some people are allergic to latex and cannot use condoms. They give condoms away for free at most medical clinics and neighborhood organizations. Next, the IUD or implant. The IUD is a tiny device a doctor inserts into a woman's uterus that stays there for up to 12 years, preventing pregnancy. An implant is a tiny device a doctor puts into a woman's arm that regularly releases a hormone that keeps her from getting pregnant. It stays there for up to 3 years. Both these devices can be removed easily if a couple wants to have a child. Both are over 99% effective at preventing pregnancy. Both these devices do absolutely nothing to prevent disease. So the best protection against both pregnancy and disease is using either the IUD or implant, and also using a condom. You can get an IUD or implant at Planned Parenthood or a neighborhood health clinic. The contraceptive pill uses a hormone to avoid pregnancy, just like the implant. But because women can forget to take it on time, it can be much less effective than the implant. And how about the dental dam, or the internal condom? A dental dam is a rectangular piece of latex, and the internal condom is a large tube of latex resembling a very wide condom. Both of these devices are made to create a latex block between a mouth and an anus, or a mouth and a vagina, to prevent transmission of STDs. Again, latex breaks when it rubs against latex, so you should not use a condom with either of these options. Because the anus has particularly rough edges, anal sex produces much friction. This can result in tiny openings in the skin on the penis and in the anus, and can result in the actual passage of blood from one sex partner to the other. Therefore, anal sex is the type of sexual contact that most easily transmits STDs. The most effective way to protect oneself against disease when having anal sex is to use a condom with lots of lubricant. As I mentioned earlier, the lubricant must be made to be used with a condom, and it would be even better if it was made particularly for anal sex.
We have one more thing to go over with regards to safe sex practices. Sometimes a partner will want to have sex with you without using protection. They may even romantically say that they feel it will be more intimate without having a condom on. Sex with a condom on is extremely pleasurable. If they want you to believe something else, what they're telling you is false. A person who is asking you to have sex without protection is asking you to possibly mess your life up so that they can have a little more fun. Trust me when I say the world is full of people who will love to have a loving relationship with you without taking a chance on messing up your life. Right, Loki? That's right. That's right.
Whew, we've gotten much of the difficult technical stuff out of the way. Still, some of the most important and interesting topics are ahead of us. How about we look at human sexuality from a moral standpoint? How do we make proper moral decisions about sexuality? I mean, as long as you aren't hurting anyone and you are consenting partners, does morality intersect with sexuality? Humans are apes. All apes are mammals. When mammals have sex, it is a very brief, thoughtless exercise. Only a very few mammals, 3%, mate or pair up for life. Usually they just move along after the brief sex, and a little while later the mother gives birth to babies who are able to walk and can quickly go on to independence. Human babies are different. Because they have such big brains, they need to be born before they've grown so much that their skulls simply won't be able to get out of the mother's womb. They are born to be very needy for a very long time. Extended childhood, full of nurturance, requires devoted nurturers, parents who are caring and loving. As a result, humans have evolved as a caring and loving mammal with a reflective intelligence. The human intelligence can look at itself critically from the outside. Freud called our identity, or who we consider ourselves to be, our ego. He called that voice outside our identity, the one that scrutinizes our own behavior and plans to do better, our superego. Our superego instructs us to behave lovingly and carefully towards others. It is a human trait that should come natural to a person who is raised in a proper, loving environment. So we can aim to be careful and loving. We can aim to find a balance between what we want and what others want. This is called the Golden Rule. It is a constant in human philosophy, stated in every culture going back to Confucian times. Do to others as you would have others do to you. This means all the concerns I raised today, all the things you need to watch out for to protect yourself, you also need to watch out for on behalf of your sexual partner. Is this really something your partner wants? Is it a good decision for that person? For example, sexual behavior often involves dominant behavior. One partner gets sexual enjoyment off the other partner taking control, and in turn, the other partner may enjoy being in control. That's called dominance. Young people new to sex might falsely think that one sign of enjoyment from a partner means they are always turned on by being dominant or by being dominated. But it can actually be just for a moment when they actually enjoy that kind of a role. During sex, partners must always be reevaluating the other's enjoyment. Are they still into this? Maybe they want to be dominant now. Or maybe they no longer want any kind of dominant behavior. Boys, who often are cast in dominant roles in society, may believe it is manly to dominate a girl in a romantic relationship. It is not. Mature men are thoughtful and caring. They ask questions of their partner.
When I was a freshman in college, I was a virgin, which means I had never had sex with anyone before. Just before winter break, I fell madly in love with a girl. You might call it a swoon, head over heels. So she went home for winter break and I stayed in the city. And one night I went out to a bar with friends, one of whom I didn't know wanted to have sex with me. At the bar, I got drunk. And then the girl pretty much just threw herself at me. And I ended up having sex. The next morning, I felt absolutely horrible. What I had hoped would be a beautiful experience with this person I was in love with, my first sexual experience, was a drunken, boozy, very negative memory that I didn't want in my head. I made poor moral decisions. I should have been careful about my alcohol intake, and I should have thought ahead defensively about sexuality. She also made poor moral decisions. If she'd been a good friend of mine, she wouldn't have been so insistent, and maybe she would have gone off and found herself someone who was interested in sex just for fun.
Sex for fun. Now there's a topic we need to cover. The fact is, the world has lots of people who practice sex for fun or sex for release of sexual urges. These people don't need to care about you or even like you. They will act politely, they will say lots of romantic stuff, and then after you have sex with them, they will tell you how wonderful the experience was and move on. Is this a bad thing? Is it a sad thing? Do you want to be a person like that? Or would you prefer to be a person who only wants sex as part of a close, intimate, and truly loving relationship? There is a gravity to intimacy with another person that it is possible to become desensitized to. Our choices in how casually we treat sex govern our ability to enjoy that gravity, the joy of sensing how close and important a relationship is to us and how vital we are to another person. Do we need to take care to maintain that very special role sex can play for us? I believe that's a moral question. It may also be that for many of us, the decision of which type of person we will be has already been determined. We may have no interest in intimacy with another person. Or we may have no ability to find comfort in meaningless flings. I have no conclusions or answers, but just to say, if you don't know which type of lover you are, you probably will want to put some thought into it as you mature so that you are prepared. And be cautious.
All right. What you doing there? I used to work the front desk at my college dormitory as a desk clerk. I used to work the midnight shift. I would see young people coming in late at night with older men that they'd met at bars or clubs outside. I'd see them go up in the elevator together, and then about an hour later the men would emerge, their clothing disheveled, hurrying out of the building alone. I don't have a better way of saying this. Older people who pursue young people romantically are trolls.
A troll is a mythological figure who sits at a bridge and victimizes the stream of people who regularly pass over. So in modern parlance, a troll is a person who has devised some way of victimizing other people they meet randomly for their own benefit. It may happen in a bar, it may happen on the internet, it even happens sometimes in a classroom. That's right, it was not unusual to see college professors showing off in front of young people who were gullible enough to have sex with them because of the power the professor wielded in the classroom. The students thought they were adults now and were clever enough to deal with the older adults. They were not. For the first time in life, young adults practice guile, artifice, and affectation. Clever ways of presenting yourself to make others think things about you that you want them to think about you. Personal growth does not end at adulthood, though. We keep learning and understanding more and more. A person who is significantly older than you can easily see past your guile and wrap you around their finger without you even being aware they are thinking about you. An older adult who is not a troll will not respond to you romantically. They know there's nothing that the two of you can do together beyond sex that is meaningful, and they know that at your age, a decision to be a casual lover might be foolish. Not only are older adults who pursue young people trolls, but there are some your own age. Trolls have numerous sexual experiences. As a result, they know what words work to confuse a person they are trying to get to perform sexually for them. They know how to get them to drink alcohol or take drugs, which lowers their inhibitions. They know how to dangle tempting promises before them. And they know how to read your individual personality and say things that work with people like you.
My advice is, don't be a troll. Be a human. Loving and caring. Steer clear of trolls. Smile at them and say, "Aren't you precious?" And then move on.
Millions of years have gone into your evolution from a single-celled organism to the complex colossus of trillions of individual cells that you have become. The changes puberty brings to your body are a very natural step into a new, more challenging life in which your private world is larger and more unruly, and you find a greater urgency towards imagining who you will become and working to create that new person. A practice of safe sex using condoms and an IUD or implant will serve as a reliable guide when you find a partner who loves and cares for you as much as you love and care for them. You will find frightening moral challenges and distractions looking to make a fool of you. You may very well fail at being perfect. You might even find yourself in a hopeless swoon. Of all mammals, humans are especially naturally inclined towards being loving and caring. We find our greatest joys in romantic love and creating new life. Sexuality? You've got this.
I hope this has been helpful. Please give me a like if you're feeling it, and check out my other videos by clicking the links. Included are videos relating the secret guide to perfect homeschooling, the one secret rule to raising a brilliant child,
and the most important parenting skill.